one is to give you some perspectives on assessments and the reasons why assessments are important and that we do need to use assessments strategically. When we use them the right way, they certainly are a very good aid to both parents and teachers. Our second objective is to review the PARCC home report. The PARCC home report will be going home to parents, and once it goes home, we are sure that teachers and other educators in the school level will have a lot of questions about the PARCC home report. And so the main purpose of this webinar is to review that report with you so that when parents come to you with questions, you will be able to understand what questions they're asking, and you will actually know what the home report looks like from their perspective. And our last objective, which is going to be rather brief, but we can delve into it more deeply on the next webinar series if we need to do so, is a brief review of the performance levels that are used in the PARCC assessment. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. But first, I would like to introduce you to my team. I am Cecilia Rowe. I am the Director of Instructional Assessment and Professional Learning at MSDE, and I'm very happy to welcome you all with us today. Also on my team is Angela de Guzman. Angie is the one who is actually has been moderating this webinar for you. She's the one who went over all of the logistics with you a few minutes ago, and she will be staying with us the entire time and helping with any kind of logistical problems that we may have. Hopefully you've all been able to log on and you've been able to get in and have been successful with the audio check. We also have Daniel Capozzi. Daniel's the quiet one behind the scenes who works to also help Angie to make sure everybody's logged in and is successful in accessing the webinar. And Daniel and Angie will both be moderating the chat room. Behind the scenes, we have some other MSDE people who are also online. We have Amy Bernstein, who is our Director of Communications. We have Dr. Doug Strader, who is our Director of Assessment. We have Ava Spencer, who is our Coordinator of English. So we have a number of other MSDE people who will also be helping us in the chat room, although they won't really be speaking during any of the slides, but they will be answering questions and things in the chat room. So just if you have questions, please put them in the chat room. Those MSDE individuals will try to answer the questions. There will also be time at the end of the webinar to ask additional questions and anything that we missed that we weren't able to get to in the chat room. If there are questions to which we do not know the answers at this time, we will let you know, and we will certainly send you the answers to those questions as a follow-up. In addition, there are some documents and things that we will send you as a follow-up. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted on our eConnect site, formerly known as Blackboard, so that you can access it at any time and use it and watch it again. You can certainly use it for a faculty meeting or any other purpose for which you think that it would be appropriate. I also want to welcome with us some other guest presenters. We have some master teachers from around the state who have agreed to join us today to give their perspective on the PARCC home report that's going to be going home for parents. We have with us Mary Hattery. She is from Howard County, and she is an elementary literacy coach at several schools in Howard County. We have Karen Hansen. Karen is from Queen Anne's County, and she is a teacher at Queen Anne's County High School. We have Catherine Cook, and Katie is in Cecil County at Northeast Elementary School. We have Dr. Nicole Gavin from Baltimore City. She's at William Peka Elementary School. And we have Bethany Husick, who is from Anne Arundel County and is from Marley Middle School. They will be helping us with the chat room as well, but mostly they will actually be interjecting comments and questions and a teacher's perspective into some of the different aspects of the presentation that we're delivering today. So I want to welcome the 5 of them. They were very brave to join us, and we really appreciate their input, because although all of us at MSE were teachers at one time, we are certainly not teachers right now during this era of the new Maryland College and Career Ready assessments and this new the new PARCC assessments. So we are very happy to have them in order to give us that perspective, that feet on the ground kind of perspective. Okay, teaching, learning, and assessing go hand in hand. A good assessment is really important because it really helps teachers understand many, many things about a student. In addition, it helps teachers with many issues that they may have if they need to individualize instruction for a student. And they do also assist teachers as well as parents to understand where students' needs are, to help them understand where instructional levels may need a little bit of extra help, to individualize instruction for students, to help teachers understand if students are ready to move on to the next level, to succeed in college and the workforce, and to just basically individualize and meet instruction based upon students' needs. And in this era, we certainly need to be able to individualize instruction to meet our students' needs. So in that way, a good assessment is very much like a good checkup with a doctor. A doctor certainly uses various tests or assessments to look at the patient and diagnoses the needs of the patient, and teachers do the same thing, and parents can also do the same thing with the results of the assessment. And then a teacher can, as a teacher can do the same thing a doctor does and prescribe medicine or prescribe instructional supports in order to help the student move on to the next level. Our schools in Maryland offer a menu of informative assessments. This screen shows a few. The ones that have asterisks next to them are high school level, and they are not mandatory assessments in the state of Maryland. They are optional assessments that students may choose to participate in. The MSA Science and the HSA are the mandatory assessments that we use in the state of Maryland. Those are the only ones that are mandatory in the state of Maryland. The federal law requires that students across the different states in the United States do have to give regular annual checkups to find out, to assess students and their needs. And so Maryland uses the MSA and the HSA. In addition to the MSA and the HSA, we have now added PARCC to our mix of assessments. PARCC is a very important assessment because Maryland adopted the College and Career Readiness Standards 3 years ago. Actually, we adopted them in 2010, but they didn't go into full implementation until about 3 years ago across the state. They are more rigorous. They put much more emphasis on critical thinking, problem solving, writing. They also require students to actually give evidence for their answers. We've actually never had we've never had students have to give evidence for their answers in the past. And so for that reason, it was very easy for parents and teachers, for students. I'm being distracted by a text message I'm getting about somebody who's having difficulty logging in, so I apologize. Our students could actually guess at answers in the past, and it's much more difficult to do that now because of the fact that they have to give evidence in order to support the answers that they're giving. So we are definitely raising the bar and expecting more of our students with our new rigorous standards, and as a result, our assessments that we had currently been giving are no longer going to match these new rigorous standards. So we needed to have PARCC assessments. We needed to adopt new assessments, and in this case, we chose PARCC in order to assess alignment with the new standards. Okay, so PARCC helps parents and teachers understand if the student is meeting grade level expectations, and there are two major areas, English language arts and literacy, where the PARCC assessments are assessing. And also I want to emphasize a little bit the literacy piece of that, because not only are students being assessed in English language arts, but that assessment is also assessing literacy in other subject areas. There are separate literacy standards for history, social studies, science, and other technical subjects. So a lot of the text and writing assignments that are used in the English language arts literacy test does also assess literacy in those content areas. It also helps us see how students are performing relative to their peers, and it helps us see what the students' academic strengths and weaknesses are. What we can do to help them at home and in class, and also to help students stay on track for success. So it gives us information on all of those things. And at this point, I would like to see if any of our guest master teachers would like to interject any comments about this slide or the slides I have just presented.
Hello, this is Bethany Fusak from Anne Arundel County. I am an AVID site coordinator, and AVID is a class that is designed to help students set goals And this is definitely aligned with the bottom two bullet points with the feedback, students' strengths and weaknesses, having students see where they are doing a great job and maybe where they're struggling, setting some goals, and also communicating with home. What more can parents do or tutors outside of the classroom do? That's always something that everyone is always wanting to know. So it's a great way, PARCC feedback, additional feedback that helps us communicate more, and it also helps teachers individualize the instruction based on the student's strengths and weaknesses.
Thank you, Bethany. That was a great perspective.
I'm actually speaking, but unfortunately my mic was turned off. I hadn't turned it back on. Thank you, Angie. The test is different in other ways as well. It's also different in format. One of the major formats and ways it's different is that students now can take the assessment online. And in the past in Maryland, only the Science MSA was online. That actually gives Maryland a heads up because many other states who are now doing these new assessments online did not have previous assessments that way. And so we actually learned a lot of lessons with the implementation of our Science MSA online that helped us to implement the new PARCC assessments online with more fidelity. Testing in the past contained, mostly multiple choice. Now there are some multiple choice on the new PARCC assessments, but those multiple choice require evidence. They have a Part A and a Part B. In the past, we also had a lot of memorization. Students had some content knowledge that they needed to know that was basically memorization, and the new assessments do not require memorization. And it also had a lot of information on it that didn't really have any context, where students were asked to do writing and different types of things where they didn't have any context, that didn't connect it to anything else. Now, with the new assessments, not only is the rigor increased, not only are students asked to provide evidence, but students are also asked to read and write and reflect upon their writing and upon what they're reading. They're asked to compare texts. They're asked to analyze and show results, and they are given information in a real-world context with an added emphasis on informational text. Bethany, I believe you wanted to make a comment on this slide as well.
Thank you. The testing now, just the words that are associated with it are higher level thinking words that our students should be using and seeing in class. So I just wanted to point out words like analyze and justify are vocabulary words that the students will now be seeing more often on PARCC.
Thank you, Bethany. So how are we doing so far with the PARCC implementation? Year one, which was last school year, 2014-15, things went very smoothly. Again, I think Maryland had a heads up because of the fact that we had been given the Science MSAs online in the past. We had 575,000 students take the PARCC assessment online. That was roughly 80% of our students who actually took the assessment online. That was phenomenal. All of our districts and all of our schools in the state had the option of giving the test in a pen and pencil version, but the districts decided to jump in with both feet on the ground running and decided to actually give as much of the assessments online as possible. And that gave them a lot of feedback so that they are able to assess what worked and what didn't work, so they can make changes to different online structures in order to help make the implementation go more smoothly for the next time. So we really applaud all the districts who decided to do that because it really does help in this time when we have a little bit of flexibility to actually see where the needs are. So it really did assist in that way. For year two, we also learned some lessons from our first year of implementation. And one of the things we learned is that the test was longer than we really anticipated, and we really needed to shorten the test overall. Basically, 90 minutes has been cut off the test, so overall it is 90 minutes shorter than it has been in the past. In addition, we have a shorter testing window. Last year's implementation had 2 testing windows. So those of you who actually implemented the test last year probably remember that there was one testing window which closed, and then there was another testing window. There was the performance-based assessment, which came first. That window closed, and then the end-of-year assessment, which was computer scored, came after that. This coming school year, or this school year that we're in right now, 2015 and 16, students will only have 1 testing window and not 2. So that was something else that we learned that needed to change as a result of last year's implementation. We also are moving the test closer to the completion of the courses, and this year there was a delay in getting the results back because we had to do a lot of analysis on the students' submissions. We won't have to do that with this year's implementation of the assessment, so the results will come back sooner than they had in the past. Okay, when are parents going to see the scores? This is a basic timeline of the implementation of PARCC from 2013. In 2013, that was when Maryland went to full implementation of the College and Career Ready standards. You may remember I said that we adopted them in 2010, and different districts in the state during that time frame were writing curriculum around those new standards. The state does not write the curriculum. The districts writes the curriculum. And the state, on our level, was actually running all kinds of professional learning, especially in the summers, for teachers in order that they could practice and try out the new assessments, learn how the instructional shifts would apply to their own teaching. And so there was a little bit of flexibility there up until 2013 to play with the standards and to experiment with the teaching in order to learn what we needed to do to meet the rigor of the new standards. Then in 2013, we implemented the standards completely across the state. So in 2014-15, students were getting ready to take PARCC. So this is the point where PARCC was implemented for the first time. In year 2, that's 2015, the school year we're going into this year. You can see there are all kinds of things happening this year. In the fall, there are school PTA meetings and other district kinds of presentations that are happening on PARCC in order to help parents understand PARCC. In the winter, the PARCC scores are being sent home. They actually may be sent home a little earlier, maybe in the late fall. In the spring, the PARCC, again, as I previously said, is going to be shorter and more streamlined. And then in the summer of year 2 to 2016, the assessment scores will be sent home. So as you can see, they will be going home sooner. In 2016 to 2017, PARCC will become a graduation requirement, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a future slide. Okay, what are the scores going to show? This is a piece of the home report that's going home to parents. It's not the complete home report. You see the round circle with the number 1 next to it, shows what the student's level is overall. That's an average of the student's levels. Number 2 shows what those levels mean, and you see that in this particular case, well, actually in all cases, in all grade levels, in all contents, the lowest score is a 650 and the highest score is an 850. Then in number 3, it shows a comparison of the student scores compared to the school average, the district average, the state average, and the PARCC average. The PARCC average would be the average compared to all of the states who are administering the PARCC assessment. So if the student score over number 1 is a 739, that tells the parent that their child is below the school average, below the district average, the state average, and the PARCC average. If you look at those averages going across, they are all higher than the student average of 739. So that is what that part of the home report is going to show, but that is only one piece of the home report. At this time, I'm going to turn this over to our master teachers because they have a lot of observations that they made on this slide that they would like to share with you.
Sure, I'll just jump in. One of the things that was that we expect that many of the student scores fall in the levels assessment, and students are learning new material and need catch up and improve their skills to be college and career ready. And this is a good thing, implementing a more rigorous curriculum now, which is going to lead to more students being prepared for college and for the workforce.
I'd just like to add to what Nicole said, that all the Maryland assessments in the past, what she said was true. As more rigorous standards are introduced, students begin on lower levels, and then they steadily improved. And that was true of the MSA, the MSPAP, and if you remember all the way back to the functional tests, which I do remember, I was a teacher when those were being administered. In all cases, students started out at lower levels and then improved. And there's a lot of reasons for this, and one reason certainly is because at each instance we implemented more rigorous standards, and so as we prepared students on higher levels and more rigorous standards, it took time for the students to actually acquire that knowledge and skill level. And to just give you a little analogy, if you think about a child who's learning to play basketball, in the beginning they start with a basketball hoop that's lower than normal, and as their skills progress, the hoop raises higher and higher until they're able to actually make successful, to successfully get the basketball through the hoop on the highest possible level and achieve that level. And that has shown to be true with every assessment that we have implemented in the state of Maryland. This is actually our third wave of reform, and so we don't see any reason why that won't happen again. And that's not a bad thing. That's just the way we learn, and it's the way we progress. Mary wasn't able to log on. She did tell me when we were having a discussion about the slides, that there is a range of scores that correlate with the performance levels, and that she wanted to draw your attention to the increments for each age. For each range, that you have the increments are not even between the ranges. And she also wanted to mention that it was important for teachers to realize that the scores also show how students performed compared to their peers within the school district, state, and other states taking PARCC. And she wanted to point out that MSA did not give that information on a larger scale than the state, since it was a state assessment. So I'm not sure what happened. Mary may have had some issues trying to get logged in. Okay, the next slide is showing another piece of the home report. Again, this is just another piece of it. I will send you samples of home reports as a follow-up to this presentation. The scores on this part, this particular one is in English Language Arts Literacy, as was the previous slide. It's showing individual scores for reading and writing. But in addition to that, on the bottom it shows how the child is doing in two other areas: literary text and writing expression. There are other things that it shows that are actually not showing on the screen. It also reports information on informational text, vocabulary, knowledge, and use of language conventions. The same is true for mathematics, and I will give you a little overview of mathematics in the next slide. But I again want to invite our master teachers to give their comments on this slide.
So I'm going to jump in again. This is Nicole Gavin. One of the things that I noticed about this is that the reports are very detailed. And I think this is really going to help teachers plan more focused instruction for students. They're going to receive more detailed reports with specific skills, and teachers will be better able to align the intended curriculum with their instruction and the assessment at the same time.
Okay, it doesn't look like Karen is logged in either. Karen and Mary, both in our discussion of this slide, also had some additional comments to make. Mary wanted to point out that the range of scores for reading is 10 to 90, while writing is 10 to 60. So the ranges for these sub-areas, these sub-skills, are not necessarily equal across the board. She also mentioned that in looking at the strengths and needs in each area, a child could perform above expectations while in another below expectations, but the overall score places them on the continuum to find their performance level. And I think that's an important observation that Mary made when we were looking at these school reports individually. Karen also doesn't seem to be logged in. And she said that that her observation on this slide was that it absolutely will allow teachers to individualize instruction, that because you have all of these sub-scores in many, many different areas, it will allow teachers to individualize instruction. And in the past, teachers have only had broad areas, but now in English language arts, teachers have feedback on types of text, writing, vocabulary, conventions, and other things, and it will allow teachers to customize interventions and to target instruction more specifically. Okay, this is the math slide. This is showing a little more information than because I didn't scroll down all the way on the slide for the English in the last slide. So you can see a little more here. You can see that the mathematics score, I believe this is grade 4 if I remember correctly. The mathematics score is showing how the child is doing in major content, in expressing mathematical reasoning, in additional and supporting content, and in modeling and application. It's not giving an individual score here, and let me go back to the English one and share that with you again. Notice that in literary text and writing expression, again, it's not giving an individual score. And remember, I also mentioned that part of that is cut off, that there are also literary text, writing expression, informational text, vocabulary, and knowledge and use of language conventions are also some sub-scores that are shown for English language arts. So in mathematics, using this slide as an example, and this, again, this is true of English language arts, the legend, Angie is pointing to the legend down there below. She has a green arrow pointing to the legend. If there is a down arrow, it shows the parent that in that particular area, and this again is the parent home report, in that particular area, their child was below expectations. But if it's the arrow that goes across horizontally, it shows that they nearly meet expectations. And if the arrow is going upward toward the sky, it shows that they are meeting or exceeding expectations. So in this example, this particular child in this home report is nearly meeting expectations in major comment, is meeting or exceeding expectations in mathematical reasoning, is below expectations in additional supporting content, and is below expectations in modeling and application. So again, that aligns with what some of our master teachers were saying about the previous slide, where there is so much more information from this assessment than they've ever had in the past that will help them to assist students in individualized instruction to meet their individual needs. Okay, these are the performance levels. These performance levels were set by the PARCC consortia, and the consortia is plural, I apologize. The PARCC consortium decided as a group, and Maryland is a lead among the PARCC consortium states, and that these were the descriptors for these levels. Now, I do want to mention that Maryland has not decided how these levels are going to reflect on a student's readiness to graduate from high school and other forms of accountability. Probably in the spring of 2016, the state board will be making that decision. So we do not know those levels yet and which level is going to be the determination for high school graduation, but these are the descriptors that the PARCC consortium states agreed would be used to describe the different levels. Okay, at this time, I want to share with you some resources from PARCC, and there are a couple of resources I want to share with you. One of the resources that I want to share with you is a resource called understandingthescore.org. It's a brand new website for parents from PARCC, and it has a lot of different features that will really help parents. I'm trying to share my screen right now, so hopefully this will work. Okay. Hopefully you can see my screen at this point. This is the landing page for understandingthescore.org, and on this page it shows a new kind of academic checkup. So if I scroll down on the page, you can see that there is a link to the overall score. What you have in front of you is that home report that I've been sharing with you in the previous slides. And this home report is actually a full page. I showed it to you in 3 pieces, but this is the full page, what it all looks like put together. And if you click the Continue Guide, it goes to other things that actually breaks down the score guide into different pieces and actually walks the parent through the score guide. So this would be very valuable in helping parents understand the score guide. This would also be very valuable for you on the school level if you're having a meeting with parents around the time that the score reports come out. You could actually have them go on to this score guide and actually take a look at this and play with this and discover what all the different pieces mean on their own, where you're actually moderating such a meeting. It could be used in a faculty meeting. There's a lot of different ways as a teacher you could use this website. The website also has links to help your child. Again, the purpose of this is for parents, but it's also very helpful for teachers, I believe. Parents can select a topic, they can select a type of resource, and they can actually do a search on different kinds of resources. They can download PDFs. If they click the download the PDF, there's all different PDFs here. If they click this, it actually opens in a different window, so it doesn't open over top of this window. There are a lot of videos on here. Here's one video. It says watch the video, where teachers can actually look at, where parents can actually look at the video with different topics. There are many, many short videos where they have interviewed many teachers from across all of the PARCC states, and they've asked them one question, and the teacher has responded to that question. Excellent videos on here. There's a section on about the test, about the new state assessment, and it gives you a lot of information about what assessment is and about the importance of the PARCC assessment and what it does. I am going to play this video. It's very, very short.
So yeah, we can't hear the audio of that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you couldn't hear the audio. It's a very good video. I really recommend that you go on and you try to take a look at the different videos and the different information on this website. There is also a link to your state resources. So if I go, these are the PARCC consortium states. If I click on Maryland, it has the new state test. It gives you a link right to the Maryland State Department of Education website. It goes right to our website. And since I wanted to play this video for you, but obviously since you weren't able to hear the last one, I suspect you won't be able to hear this one either. But this is an extremely short video, maybe a minute at the most, where Pauline Carey talks about the importance. She's from Prince George's County Schools, and she talks about the importance of the PARCC assessment and how it's going to be important to the state of Maryland. There was also another video that I wanted to share with you, but based upon the fact that you could not hear the previous one that I tried to play, I'm not going to attempt to play it. It will be on this website soon, and it actually will walk through the score reports. You could actually play it for a parent group. You could actually play it at a faculty meeting. It will be posted on this website probably in the next week or so, but it's not there yet. One of the things I want to say about it, though, that's exciting for Maryland is that one of our Maryland teachers, Laura Shelton, who's from Prince George's County, she's a middle school science teacher, and she is one of the spokesmen that walks parents through the score report. It's very, very well done. She does an excellent job. There is also another teacher who is a social studies teacher who walks parents through parts of the score report. And I think it was very astute of PARCC to use 2 teachers who were not English language arts or math teachers to do this, because it underscores the importance of the literacy standards in the PARCC assessments. Now I'm going to try to unshare my screen, stop sharing, and go back to the webinar. Okay, you should have the PowerPoint back on the screen again. Okay, do the PARCC assessments count? The PARCC assessments, as I kind of went through this already with you with the previous slide, but just again, I'll go through it a little more quickly. Year one in 2014-15 was the transition year. Students were required to take the PARCC assessment. They were not required to pass it. There was no passing score that has even been determined yet, and it was not tied to graduation, but they were required to take it. And the purpose of last year was to set a baseline for the new test. This test is not the same as our previous test, so we can't compare the scores of this test to our previous tests because of the rigor of this test, so we need to set a new baseline. So it was very important that students take this test seriously in order for us to have authentic data that we could use as a baseline. This coming year, again, the transition will continue. Again, it will not be linked to graduation. Our state superintendent was very wise in making the decision to give students 2 years where they didn't tie this to graduation. It also gave our teachers time to prepare our students better with the new rigorous standards in order to have more success on the new assessments. In 2016-17, as I said previously, that will be the year that we will determine whether or not, but what the score will be for passing. And again, as I said previously, probably in the spring of 2016, the state board will make that decision. And that will be the first year that students will need to pass the PARCC assessments in English language arts and literacy and also in mathematics in order to graduate. So it will again be tied to their high school graduation, just as English language arts and mathematics were tied to high school graduation during the HSAs. Okay, the next slide says a new starting point, and this is a new starting point for us. We're starting all over. So a low score on PARCC or on a performance level does not mean that a child is failing to learn. It absolutely does not mean that. It's a starting point. It gives us a chance to look at where the students have difficulties. It gives us a chance to look at where their strengths are. It gives us an opportunity to individualize instruction for the students and absolutely an opportunity for growth so that a student can work toward grade level expectations in order to graduate college and career ready. It's one way to evaluate a student's progress. It is not the only way. Certainly, individual districts have other assessments that they use. This is the one that the state uses. And also teachers have used formative assessment, and they look at other ways of evaluating a child's progress. And all of those things combined give us a complete snapshot of a child and where the child's strengths and weaknesses lie, not just one test, such as PARCC. And the third key element is that the student scores and other information are highly protected and not shared publicly. Certainly, we have data that we have always had based as assessments, but it is not used and not shared publicly. It is used to help students and to advance students to the next level. It is not used for public dissemination. Okay, you may have heard that in some states, some PARCC states have already released results. And in particular, Ohio, Illinois, and Massachusetts have released some results from the PARCC assessments. Maryland has not done that, and there are several reasons why Maryland has chosen not to do that. A lot of the preliminary data that is available now is limited, and it's limited to only assessments that were taken online. And even though 80% of our students took the PARCC assessment online, there were 18.4% of our students who used paper and pencil. And if we were to release the data that we have now, those students would not be represented in the data. In addition, Harford County chose to give the assessment in the entire county as a paper and pencil test. They did not do it online at all. So Harford County would not be represented in any data that we release now. And that would definitely not show a complete picture of the state if we have an entire district that's not represented. So for that reason, Maryland felt that it was in our best interest not to release any results at this time, but to wait until we had a complete picture, to wait until we actually had data from the paper and pen versions of the assessment. Therefore, The high school data will be released in early October, and the grade 3 through 8 data will be released at the end of October. At that time, we will have a much more complete picture that will include the students who took the paper and pen versions of the assessment. This is the timeline that is being used for the release of the results. The districts actually are going to receive embargoed results approximately 2 weeks prior to the Maryland State Board meetings, but those results will be embargoed until it can be presented to the board. And so the high school results in English 10, Algebra 1, and Algebra 2 will go to the State Board of Education on October 27th. And then as a result of those, that information going to the state board, the paper home reports, those are those home reports that I just reviewed with you at the beginning of this presentation, those will go to districts. Those will be arriving in districts on November 3rd. So very, very shortly after the board receives the information, the districts will be receiving it and will be able to send those home reports to parents. And then in grades 3 to 8, those results will be shared with the State Board of Education on December 8th, and those results will be sent home on November 30th. The home reports will be sent home on November 30th, but again, they will be embargoed and will not be released to the public or to parents until after the board meeting. The board needs to be able to take a look at the results prior to them being released publicly. So at this time, I'm going to open this up to questions. If you want to, you can raise your hand, and then you can turn on your mic and ask the question out loud for the whole group, or you can type questions into the chat room. Any questions that we can't answer, we will certainly answer in a follow-up email. We have all of your email addresses based upon what you used at registration for the webinar. And we will also be publishing this and all of the accompanying resources that I will be emailing out on our eConnect website, which was formerly our Blackboard Learn website. So at this time, if you want to raise your hand, I'll give you a few minutes.
I have a couple questions pending.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, first question is from Sandy. Her question was, how do the lower sub-scores, the ranges, correlate to the overall scale score?
That's probably a question that we're going to have to get back to them on. I think Dr. Doug Strader would be the best person to answer that question. He is our director of assessment, and if I try to answer it, I don't want to get it wrong. So I don't want to give misinformation. So that is definitely a question we'll get back to you with in a follow-up email.
The second question is from Faye. It says, is this legend, so the legend for the lower half of the report, for each standard or for grade level?
It's grade level.
Our next question is from Sherry. It said, will teachers get a copy of the score guide for individual students as well?
I'm not sure what the teacher report is going to look like. I believe teachers will absolutely get the same. I know teachers will absolutely get the same information, but it's probably not going to be in the same format. It may be more of a class report or a school report that goes to the principals, and the principals disseminates it to the teachers. So I'm not really sure what that's going to look like, but teachers absolutely will have access to the same data.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is from Peter. It said, when you discuss passing score, does that mean the raw score or the 1 to 5 scores?
The passing score is the 1 to 5 score. So the state board has not yet determined which of those 5 scores will be the passing score for high school graduation.
Okay, this one is from Shelley. It says, are we administrating the geometry park this year?
That's another question for Dr. Strader. There has been discussion on that, and I'm not sure what the final decision was. So I think that is optional for the districts, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So that's something we will let you know in follow-up.
And then the next question says, will we look at raw scores or the level scores?
You will be looking at the level scores.
Okay, another question. So am I understanding correctly that this year students will receive feedback reports this summer? So when will teachers receive the report?
teachers should be receiving the reports prior to the parents receiving them. It's going to follow a similar timeline as the one I just shared with you, where it will go to the board first. The districts will get the information probably prior to that, but it will be embargoed, and then it will be disseminated after the board meeting. So I believe that it will be very similar to what we're doing this year, only it will be in the summer.
Okay, thank you. And we have one hand raised, so I'm going to give Brenda the chance to unmute her microphone and ask the question.
Oh, this is Brenda.
Hi, Brenda. Go ahead and answer
Hi.
the question.
I was wondering if this webinar was recorded so I can look at it and listen to it at a later time.
Yes, it is being
so
recorded.
I can go over. Okay.
Yes, it is being recorded.
We'll get a copy?
It's going to go on Blackboard Learn on eConnect, and you'll get a link to it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, would any of the master teachers who are online like to add any additional comments to anything, any additional observations that you have regarding this, or any of our attendees, if you'd like to add any additional observations that you have as a result of listening to this observation, as a result of participating in this webinar, how you think that this might assist you with your instruction with your students, or any other kind of observations that you have.
This is Katie Cook. The only thing I would like to add is that I'm really excited that the reports give us a lot more information than what we used to get from the MSA, because we're going to know exactly what sub-skills we should be working on with our groups of children to really individualize instruction at a deeper level. So I'm really looking forward to getting our reports back and being able to implement it in the classroom.
Thanks, Katie, and thank you and the other master teachers who have joined us today to assist in answering questions and to be part of the webinar. I'll wait a few more minutes to see if there are any other questions.
If you do have a question, please, and you want to use your microphone, don't forget to just raise your hand and we'll call on you. We have a question in the chat room, Cecilia. It says, online PARCC assessment provides students with visuals. PARCC paper does not. Therefore, how are these two methods of delivery fair to test takers?
PARCC, I honestly can't respond to the fact that you're saying that the paper and pencil does not provide students with visuals. I can't respond to that. I don't know if that's true or not. However, I do know that PARCC did a lot of work comparing the pen and pencil version pen and paper version as well as the online version to make sure that the scores were comparable. And that's one of the things they were doing during the pilot. You may remember that year before last, Maryland participated in the pilot, and those were the kinds of things they were looking at. The pilot scores, actually, some of them had to give the paper and pencil version, some of them had to do the online version, and they were comparing the same questions across both platforms so that they could determine the fidelity of both and to make sure that they were comparable. And so I do believe, so that was done. But as far as your comment about the visuals, if that is true, and again, I'm not just saying that it is or it isn't because I don't have knowledge there, but if that's true, the pen and pencil version must have found another way to give comparable kinds of questions in order to get the same data on students.
Thank you, Cecilia. We have another question. It says, will districts receive any group data such as number of grade 6 students and their average grade?
I'm not sure exactly which data districts are going to be receiving. We can certainly do a future webinar on that. The purpose of this webinar was on the home reports, and I know there were a couple of questions on what the data is going to look like that's going to be coming to the schools, and I'm not really prepared to address that at this time, but we can certainly address that in the future. And keep in mind that you can always go to the Maryland, the MSDE website. The MSDE website is going to have the most recent information for you, the Maryland Public Schools website. And also you can access that through that new website that I shared with you on this webinar, that Understand the Score website. You can link to the Maryland page from there. So, you know, check the website often. Check the Maryland Public Schools website and also the new Understand the Score website from PARCC. That's where the most recent information is going to be. And be on the lookout for that video that I told you about earlier that is going to be on that website soon. That video is going to walk parents through, and you can use it with parents, those home reports. You can actually use that with parents at parent meetings. I think it will be very, very valuable. Somebody just wrote, yay, Laura Shelton Fellow Teacher of the Year. Yeah, Laura is a Maryland Teacher of the Year, and she is the science teacher from Prince George's County that I mentioned, who is one of the facilitators of that video that is going to be released in the next week or so. All right, well, thank you for joining us. We are actually closing about 4 minutes early, so we're right on time. We will stay online a couple more minutes in case any more questions come through. And then you will get a follow-up email from me in the next day or two with some additional resources and also with information about where you can find the recorded version of this webinar. So again, thank you very much. Hope to see you all at an upcoming conference, MAG, MSEA, the Learning Forward Conference in National Harbor. I'm hoping to see all of you at one of those, or please invite me to your schools. I'd love to come and visit and see the exciting things that you're doing. So take care, and thank you for joining us.